Welcome to Doctorates of the Absurd, your provider of belief on demand. We are diving deep today, really deep, straight into the chaotic electric heart of radical philosophy.
Yeah, the kind of thinking that asks you to question not just your beliefs, but the very organization of the flesh you inhabit.
Exactly. This is not about self-improvement in the usual sense. It's more like metaphysical engineering.
It is.
So if you have ever felt constrained by this tyranny of having to be one thing,
Or if you suspect your desires are being, policed by forces you can't quite name.
then this dive is absolutely for you. We are taking on this revolutionary idea that the body you inhabit might just be obsolete.
Like it's factory shipped with limitations you never agreed to.
Right. And that desire, that thing we think of as the driving force of life, is not about lack, but about pure positive production.
Completely different model.
And the concept at the center of this whole maelstrom is the body without organs, or the BWO for short.
So BW.
So the mission today is to deconstruct this idea, and the source materials is very quick to tell us this.
It insists on it.
It's not a concept to just be analyzed. It's a practice, a rigorous high-stakes practice.
A path of, and they use these words, terrifying and fabulous experimentation.
It's what is left when you strip away everything that binds you to a specific restricted existence.
And this taps directly into what we could call the existential itch, that essential, nagging human problem.
What is that problem exactly?
It's the tension between the organized, predictable life we are given, strapped into our prescribed identities and our physical limitations.
Oh, the shoulds and musts.
Exactly. And on the other side, there's this fluid, chaotic, intense life that we can actively construct. The problem, as the sources frame it, is being trapped in a system of forms and functions that dictates everything.
From how we eat to how we think.
Right, and it prevents us from realizing our full energetic potential.
So the question at the heart of this inquiry is, it sounds profound, but also, frankly, a little absurd.
It does. It's, why must we see with our eyes, breathe with our lungs, think with our brain?
Why does the liver have to do only one thing and the heart another? It seems like a strange question to ask.
But it's fundamental here. Why should the body be limited by these predefined roles? The BWO proposes the possibility of something else. That simple thing, the full energetic entity, unconstrained by all these conventional boundaries.
So what if you could, walk on your head or sing with your sinuses?
Or see through your skin, because the organs themselves were just intensive functions, capable of moving around, of transforming.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you haven't read the source material, this sounds like pure madness or, a dangerous fantasy.
It can sound that way.
But the text frames this as a fundamental metaphysical battle. And the dramatic audio hook that just drives this whole thing is this question. What if the structure of your organism, the way you see, breathe, and feel, is actually the judgment of God imposed upon you?
That's a heavy line.
It is. It's saying we are talking about a coercive force that organizes our very flesh. That this structure isn't just biological necessity.
No, it's a moral and systemic imposition, a judgment.
So let's start by establishing the core binary here. The BWO is not an idea you can just possess, right?
Yeah.
It's not something you acquire and keep.
No, it's something you forever attaining. It's a process.
The text describes it as an inevitable exercise or experimentation, which is, and I love this phrasing, already accomplished the moment you undertake it, unaccomplished as long as you don't.
So the starting is the arriving.
It's a stationary voyage, a desert traveler's path that begins the moment the body has just had enough of its conventional organization and wants to slough it all off. The stakes are immediate.
And this is a huge but.
Here is the critical warning, the first injection of caution, and it's a motif we absolutely have to come back to later.
You can botch it.
You can botch it. This is not some guaranteed path to bliss. It's a high-stakes struggle where the result could be catastrophic.
It could lead to death or what they call a fabulous defeat.
Okay, so to map out this BWO, we have to first define its antagonist, the villain that imposes this judgment of God.
Right. And the enemy, very emphatically, is not the organs themselves. This is the first really crucial distinction the source material forces you to make.
So the BWO is opposed not to the individual organs, the heart, the liver, the brain,
but to the organization of those organs.
the organism.
Okay, I have to pause on that distinction because it seems deliberately confusing. The text anchors this whole concept in the writings of Antonin Artaud,
It does.
who on November 28, 1947, explicitly declared war on the organs. He said, "The body is the body. Alone it stands." And in no need of organs, organism it never is. Organisms are the enemies of the body.
Right.
So if Artaud is the foundational reference, how do we resolve that apparent contradiction? He's attacking the components, but the philosophy says the fight is against the organization.
That's a necessary challenge, you're right. The text sort of resolves this by arguing that Artaud's attack on the organs is a hyperbolic, poetic way of attacking their forced functionality.
The fight isn't against having lungs. The fight is against the imposition that the lungs must only breathe, and only in one predetermined way, and that they have to be locked into this specific hierarchical relationship with the brain and the circulatory system.
So he's attacking the organs as they're defined by the organism.
Precisely.
So the fight is against the form imposed upon the function. The organism is the tyranny of function. The brain must think. The digestive tract must process food.
And the mouth must speak in language, not sing or breathe fire.
Right.
So the organism is the judgment of God, a stratum imposed upon the BWO. And a stratum in this context is like a layer of sedimentation, of accumulation and coagulation, a binding layer.
And this layer extracts useful labor from us.
Yes, by imposing rigid, predetermined forms, restrictive bonds, and crucially, a dominant hierarchized organization where some organs like the brain or the genitals dictate the purpose of all the others.
It pursues the BWO, which is inherently fluid, and just rips it apart.
It does. It ensures that all organs enter into these predictable, non-migratory relations. Think of it like a strict operating system that locks down your hardware.
Yeah.
It makes sure the CPU only does CPU tasks and the memory only does memory tasks, and it prevents any kind of productive overlap or creative short-circuiting.
So if the organism is defined by that rigid, stratified organization, how do we define the BWO in a positive way? The source calls it intensive matter.
It does, and this is where the sort of physics of the BWO come into play.
It's non-stratified, unformed matter that lacks extension. Now that phrasing trips up everyone who reads it. How can matter lack extension? Doesn't all matter take up space?
It does, but we have to understand the type of space it occupies. When we talk about extension, we think of measurable physical things, length, width, depth. The way your arm extends 3 feet into a room.
Right.
Intensive matter is defined not by extension, but by degree. It is matter that occupies space to a given degree, and that degree corresponds to the intensities produced.
So we're talking about matter defined as energy or potentiality.
Exactly. Imagine 2 bodies occupying the same volume. One is made of loosely packed cotton. The other is a super dense neutron star. They have the same extension.
But vastly different degrees of intensity.
Vastly. The BWO is that field of intensive energy, a 0-degree matrix of production where matter equals energy. It's a surface ready to receive and propagate waves, not a bounded shape waiting to be organized.
And this definition of intensive matter brings us to that famous analogy of the egg. The BWO is described as the full egg, drawing on references from Dogon and Tantric mythologies.
Right. This egg that exists before the imposition of the strata, before organization.
And in this egg, the physical geometry we recognize, like arms and legs, is replaced by a map defined by axes, vectors, gradients, and thresholds.
It's a field of intensive coordinates, not extensive parts. It's a different way of mapping a body.
And crucially, within this intensive field, the organs function only as pure intensities.
They're not locked into one role or one position. The source explicitly says things like, no organ is constant as regards either function or position. Sex organs sprout anywhere. Rectums open, defecate, and close. The entire organism changes color and consistency in split-second adjustments.
So the function of the organ changes not because it has a fixed identity, that's the organism, but because it crosses a gradient or a threshold in the intensive field.
It's pure flexibility, pure energetic potential, unconstrained by the judgment of necessity.
Okay, so to summarize this foundational section, the BWO is this potential intensive energy. The organism is the imposed, external, organized structure that judges and restricts that energy, forcing it into these hierarchical, predictable forms.
Right. The BWO is what the body could be if it were fully released from the operating system imposed upon it by cultural, moral, and functional necessity.
Now we move into section 2, and this is where the dive gets unsettling.
It does.
Because we move from theory into practice. And the practices seem, well, they seem dark. We encounter this dreary parade of strange, almost pathetic examples. Sucked dry, catatonicized, sewn-up bodies. If the BWO is supposed to be full of ecstasy and dance, Why start with failure?
The text necessitates these examples because they represent the inherent difficulty and the inherent dangers of attempting what they call a too sudden destratification.
These are the botched BWOs.
Exactly. They're attempts to reach that plane of consistency without the requisite caution, which we'll get into later. They illustrate what happens when the attempt to shed the organism goes catastrophically wrong.
Let's detail these failures because they really set the stage for the radical philosophical reversal that comes next.
Okay, so first we have the hypochondriac body. This is a person who internalizes the judgment of God so deeply that they believe their organs are already destroyed. The damage is done internally.
So they might say things like, Miss X claims that she no longer has a brain or nerves or chest or stomach or guts.
All she has left is the skin and bones of a disorganized body. But notice the philosophical failure here. The organs are destroyed, yet nothing happens.
It remains an empty body.
Empty of both organization and positive intensity. They've successfully destroyed the stratification in their minds, but they failed to construct the intensive field. It's a dead end.
Then there's the paranoid body, which is kind of the inverse.
Right. Here, the organs are continually under attack by outside forces, rays, aliens, conspiracies. But those same outside forces immediately restore the organization. They call them divine miracles.
So the body lives without a stomach, without intestines, almost without lungs, only for some exterior transcendent agency to immediately restore the structure.
And the paranoid person can't achieve destratification because they project the entire mechanism of organization and control onto the outside world. They're trapped.
A constant cycle of attack and miraculous restoration.
Yeah.
It just proves the strata are still operating.
Completely.
And this brings us to the example the source material spends the most time dissecting, the notorious masochist body.
Yeah, and the text makes it very clear. This isn't about seeking pain as some kind of sexual detour to pleasure. This is a meticulous philosophical program.
The masochist insists on elaborate contracts, precise settings, and often, as the text describes, has their eyes, anus, urethra, and other orifices sewn shut or bound up.
The apparent goal looks like pure pain and suffering.
But the philosophical interpretation is far more complex.
It is. The masochist is attempting to constitute a specific type of BWO, a field of pure intensity, that, because of the conditions of its strict constitution, can only be populated by pain waves.
So the suffering isn't the goal.
No, it's the necessary condition to draw the plane of consistency. By closing the orifices, the points where the organism connects to the outside world where input and output are stratified, the masochist tries to seal the body into a closed, intensive circuit.
It's a radical move towards self-sufficiency.
It is. If the body is sealed off from normative, functional, input like sight, speech, digestion, it has to find a new source of intensity. And that new source, in this particular BWO, is the pain transmitted according to the contract, which is then converted into these non-personal waves flowing across the sealed surface.
And this is the hidden mechanism of the argument.
Mm-hmm.
These extreme, often failed examples are necessary because they force us to confront and completely flip the fundamental definition of desire that society,
and specifically psychoanalysis, the dominant interpretive machine,
has imposed on us. The source calls this imposition the priest's curse.
a triple curse.
Right, a triple curse that keeps desire perpetually trapped, preventing it from ever being a free, positive flow.
The first curse, spoken by the priest facing north, links desire to lack.
Desire is lack. How could it not lack what it desires?
The negative law, the castration complex, the common belief that you are always missing something, and that lack is the engine of all seeking.
And if desire is defined by lack, it can never be fulfilled. It must remain hollowed out. The second curse, facing south, links desire to extrinsic pleasure. The priest says desire will be assuaged by pleasure, but that pleasure must be a discharge that fundamentally interrupts the continuous process of desire.
And this is so critical. If desire is a continuous flow of production, then pleasure, which is localized and terminating, has to be seen as an external interruption.
An interruption designed to reimpose the strata of the subject, the self that feels pleasure, and the lack, the state of being unburdened.
Precisely.
And the third curse, facing east, links desire to a transcendent ideal. The priest exclaims, "Jouissance ultimate impossible enjoyment is impossible, but that impossibility is inscribed in desire."
So this is the realm of fantasy, the ideal, the unattainable joy that can only ever be chased, never grasped. Desire is trapped chasing an unreachable external goal.
And the BWO provides the radical rebuttal to all three of these curses by redefining desire as positive production.
It's a process without reference to any exterior agency, whether it's a lack that hollows it out or a terminating pleasure that fills it. Desire is simply the production of the real within the body's field of intensity.
And this brings us to that crucial concept of joy versus pleasure.
Right. The BWO is filled not with extrinsic pleasure, but with an immanent joy. A joy that isn't measured by pleasure and which doesn't terminate the process.
Joy is immanent to desire, meaning desire is filled by itself and its own contemplations, its own continuous process.
Whereas pleasure, which psychoanalysis seeks, must be delayed because pleasure is what they call a reterritorialization. It's an affection of a person that interrupts the continuous flow of positive desire.
So if desire is positive production, then the entire interpretive machine of psychoanalysis just falls apart.
It does.
Which leads us directly to the difference between interpretation and experimentation.
If psychoanalysis views the masochist's elaborate demands as a fantasy that has to be interpreted.
Right, linked back to castration anxiety or the mother-father complex.
The BWO approach demands we look at it as a motor program of experimentation.
We shift completely from meaning to function.
Exactly. The masochist's program detailing every lash, every knot, every sewing procedure is not a fantasy to be analyzed. It is a meticulous program for constructing a BWO, for building a system of intensive circulation.
The goal isn't psychological insight.
No. The goal is to substitute forgetting for anamnesis, the recovery of childhood memories, and experimentation for interpretation. The BWO is what remains when you successfully take away the fantasy, the significances, and the subjectifications.
Because those are all strata that inhibit the pure flow of positive desire.
We stop asking, what does this tied-up body mean? And start asking, what is this machine doing? What intensive flow is it producing?
That is the crucial transition point. We are moving from the philosophy of meaning to the engineering of matter.
Exactly.
Okay, so if interpretation is the enemy, how do we actively build this new body? It's not passive. It requires specific assemblages.
Machines made of various components, human and non-human, and a functional understanding of intensities over extension.
To map this non-extensive, intensive reality, the source turns to the ultimate philosopher of immanence, Spinoza.
Spinoza's ethics is called the Great Book of the BWO because he provides the metaphysical blueprint for a world defined by continuous flows rather than external judgment.
So in Spinoza's structure, the BWO is defined as a substance or attribute, which acts as a matrix for production. The source material uses the Latin term remissio to describe this 0 degree of intensity. I need a clearer definition there. How does a 0 degree of intensity become productive? What does remissio actually look like in practice?
Think of remissio as the established base layer, the continuous ground of being that is stable enough to allow transformation to happen on top of it.
Okay.
For the drug body, its attribute, its remissio, is absolute cold, E00. For the masochist body, its attribute is pain, E00. These aren't negations, they are the zero matrices, the intensive continuum upon which new forces are constructed.
I see. And the modes or attributes labeled latitudo in the source, that's everything that comes to pass on top of that.
That's it. The waves, the vibrations, the migrations, the thresholds, the intensities produced starting from that zero matrix. The modes are the actual process of the BWO being constructed.
So the masochist program, using this Spinozist blueprint, is the meticulous fabrication of the attribute pain 0.
Which is achieved by sewing and binding the body into a sealed surface.
So that the modes, the latitude of the pain waves, the packs of intensity can pass across it without interruption.
The 0 degree field is the foundation for the intense production that follows. That's the idea.
And the goal of this entire enterprise is to reach the plane of consistency or omnitudo.
The ultimate field of immanence, the potential totality of all BWOs. It's where there is a seamless fusional continuum, a complete connection of all intensities in substance and all substances in intensity.
It's a multiplicity that goes beyond the simple opposition of one versus many.
Right. Drug users, masochists, schizophrenics, lovers, they are all, in their own ways, constructing a piece of this continuum through their various assemblages.
And this idea of the assemblage is key. Let's look at how these intense fields manifest in practice. The masochist example provides a surprisingly detailed blueprint for constructing an assemblage that achieves BWO status.
It does.
The masochist constructs an entire assemblage involving himself, the horse or animal, and the mistress rider, complete with specific settings and rules. The philosophical purpose of this complex setup isn't just drama.
No, it's to achieve a becoming animal that fundamentally inverts the usual application of forces in the organism.
What do you mean by that, inverting forces?
The masochist is aiming to destroy his innate biological organized forces and replace them with transmitted forces. Think of how a horse is trained. Humans impose transmitted forces, the reins, the whip, the saddle, to regulate the horse's innate wild forces.
The stratification system works to tame the innate.
Exactly. In the masochist assemblage, the signs are inverted. The horse transmits its transmitted forces, the energy and rhythm of the ride, and the whip to the masochist.
And this process tames the masochist's own innate chaotic forces.
But not by repressing them, by converting them into controlled, organized power or intensities. And this conversion is guaranteed by the mistress rider, who operates the machine according to the contract.
The result is a fusion where the masochist seeks the imprint of your body as I have never had it before. This is where the function of the organ is transformed.
Right. The legs are still organs, but the boots worn by the mistress cease to be footwear. They determine a zone of intensity as an imprint on the BWO. The organ, while still physically there, is functionally dissolved into a field of pure intensity.
A true becoming animal.
That's the goal.
And the genius of this philosophical framework is its ability to identify similar mechanisms in seemingly disparate cultural practices. It proves the universality of this BWO project. Let's look at courtly love.
A great example. This medieval practice centered on the infinite delay and renunciation of external physical pleasure.
A traditional psychoanalytic reading would interpret this delay as desire suffering from lack, or as chasing a transcendent, impossible ideal.
But the source argues the absolute opposite.
How so?
The infinite delay in courtly love is, on the contrary, an achieved state where desire fills itself and constructs its own internal field of immanence.
So the renunciation of external pleasure is vital, because pleasure, as we established, interrupts the flow.
Precisely. By delaying physical climax indefinitely, the lovers are making a BWO upon which intensities pass continuously, fusing interior and exterior, self and other, via singularities that are no longer personal.
The joy is in the flow itself, the intensive connection, not the physical termination.
The courtly love experience, the assay or test, is not a failed attempt to reach a transcendent ideal. It is the perfect establishment of a positive, continuous field of desire that lacks nothing. The separation is the very condition of the intensity.
And we find this positive, lackless definition of desire explicitly codified in ancient Taoist technique.
Yes, this gives us the technical instructions for constructing the intensive BWO.
Chinese Taoist treatises describe the formation of a circuit of intensities between male, yang, and female, yin, energy, a system designed to multiply life force.
And the core condition for this continuous circulation and multiplication of power is that the man must not ejaculate, or at least must learn to recirculate the energy internally.
Which is fundamentally different from a puritanical denial or a sign of internal lack.
Completely. It is the literal, technical method used to constitute an intensive body without organs, Tao. The energy, the pure, positive desire, is prevented from exiting and terminating in external pleasure, which would reimpose the strata of the sexual organism.
Instead, it's forced to circulate internally, drawing the plane of consistency, demonstrating that desire, when properly channeled and protected from termination, lacks nothing and is completely positive and self-sufficient.
So the BWO is never a singular, isolated thing. The Taoist BWO, the masochist BWO, the drugged BWO, they are all what the source calls plateaus.
It uses Gregory Bateson's term, plateaus, continuous regions of intensity that are constructed so they don't allow themselves to be interrupted by external termination, nor do they build toward a climax.
They are pieces of immanence that, together, constitute a potential whole.
So every BWO is made up of these plateaus, and the ultimate abstract goal is the construction of a great abstract machine capable of plugging all these BWOs together, producing a continuum of all intensive continuities across social and biological fields.
It's the utopian vision of an entirely destratified world.
Okay, we have established the full magnificence of the BWO as a concept of intensive production, but now we have to pivot.
To the necessary art of caution.
Exactly. The text is so insistent. The experimentation of the BWO cannot be a wild sledgehammer destruction of the self.
No. If you try to jump directly onto the plane of consistency without adequate preparation, you risk not the BWO, but a catastrophic collapse.
Which means we have to keep enough of the organism, enough significance, and enough subjectivity just to survive and continue the work.
The art is in the dosage, the fine file, rather than the blunt instrument.
So let's define the three binding layers. The strata that exert the judgment of God and which must be patiently dismantled or strategically used. The text defines the three great strata.
They secure and restrict us, operating on the body, the soul, and the self.
First is the organism. The coercive rule imposed upon us is, you will be organized, you will articulate your body into stable functioning parts, lungs, brain, liver, otherwise.
You're just depraved, sick, or mad. This stratum dictates physical necessity.
Second is significance. The rule here is intellectual and linguistic.
You will be interpreter and interpreted. You will have meaning, otherwise you're just a deviant. Significance clings to the soul just as the organism clings to the body.
That constant question, what does that mean, is the mechanism of significance trapping us.
Absolutely.
And third is subjectification. The rule is the political and social restriction.
You will be a subject, nailed down as one, a subject of the statement, a person with a fixed identity, mother, worker, consumer, citizen. Otherwise, you're just a tramp, a failure, or a non-entity.
This secures us to a dominant, regulated reality.
And the BWO is perpetually swinging between these three stratifying surfaces where it's subjected to judgment.
And the plane of consistency, where it unfurls and opens to experimentation.
And the BWO opposes these strata with its own set of movements, its own program of liberation.
To the organism, it opposes disarticulation.
Breaking the fixed hierarchical articulation of organs.
To significance, it opposes experimentation.
Rejecting the signifier, refusing to interpret, focusing on motor programs.
And to subjectification, it opposes nomadism.
The motionless voyage, the refusal to be fixed in an identity, desubjectification.
The entire process is about tearing the body away from the organism, the unconscious away from interpretation, and the conscious away from the fixed subject.
The conscious has to become a means of continuous exploration, and the unconscious a veritable production of real flows, not just a repository for personal childhood memories.
But the danger of overdose is paramount. We cannot just try to shatter these layers. The text warns us repeatedly.
A too violent action, a too sudden destratification can lead to catastrophe. You don't dismantle the strata wildly, you chip away carefully.
This is the danger of collapse.
If you recklessly blow apart the strata without taking precautions, instead of successfully drawing the plane of consistency, you will be killed, plunged into a black hole of inertia, or dragged toward catastrophe.
And you bring the strata back down heavier than ever?
Often resulting in suicidal tendencies or profound, debilitating madness. Staying organized, signified, and subjected is not the worst that can happen.
The worst is the demented, suicidal, empty collapse.
That's right.
And this inherent risk creates what the text calls the three-body problem. The struggle is never clear-cut, and we have to constantly distinguish the desired full BWO from its two terrifying doubles.
The first double is the empty or vitreous body.
These are the miserable bodies we saw in Section 2. The hypochondriac, the severe drug addict, the suicidal caused by overly violent, careless destratification.
They are empty of their organs instead of being filled with positive intensities. They've achieved nothing but inertia, a total failure.
The second double is the cancerous or totalitarian body.
And this is the BWO that belongs to a stratum that has begun to proliferate wildly, absorbing all flows into itself.
So think of the BWO of money, where inflation destroys all value boundaries.
Or the fascist BWO of the state or the army. These are terrifying caricatures of the plane of consistency because they aren't about freeing flows. They're about coagulating, invading, and blocking any circulation of signs or intensities that are not their own.
They imitate the plane of consistency, but use its freedom for totalizing control.
Exactly.
The full BWO, by contrast, is the one constructed meticulously on the plane of consistency, selected and guided by an abstract machine that manages the flows.
And this brings us to the example of Castaneda and the distinction between the tonal and the nagual. This is the practical handbook for managing the danger and the dosage required.
Okay, break that down for us. Tonal versus nagual.
The tonal covers everything that is organized and finite. The organism, all that is signifying and capable of interpretation or memory, and the self, the historical, social, or individual person.
So the tonal is basically the strata in their totality, the safe, predictable island.
It is. The text says it makes up the rules by which it apprehends the world. So in a manner of speaking, it creates the world.
And the nagual.
The nagual is also everything, but under the conditions where the BWO has replaced the organism, and experimentation has replaced all interpretation.
It's the world of raw flows of intensity, fluids, fibers, microperceptions, and becomings.
Becoming animal, becoming molecular. There's no longer a fixed self that feels. There's a glowing fog, a dark yellow mist. It's the chaos of the plane of consistency.
So the key strategy here is not to just destroy the tonal suddenly.
Absolutely not. The source insists the tonal must be protected at any cost. You diminish it, shrink it, clean it up, make it more efficient, but you keep it in order to survive.
The tonal is the anchor that wards off the catastrophic assault of the Nagal.
An assault which, if it erupts too violently and shatters all the strata, turns immediately into the empty body into death.
So the goal is not suicide or dissolution.
No, it's survival through continuous transition. You construct your own little machine by lodging yourself on a stratum, finding an advantageous place, producing flow conjunctions, and trying out continuums of intensity segment by segment.
You have to mimic the strata, keeping small rations of subjectivity and significance.
Not because you believe in them, but in order to turn them against their own systems when necessary. The art of dosage is ensuring continuous connections without triggering that catastrophic collapse that leads to the empty bodies or the terrifying proliferation of the cancerous fascist bodies.
This has been a profound dive into tearing consciousness away from the subject, tearing the body away from the organism, and tearing desire away from lack.
All done with the meticulous art of caution and dosage.
It is a philosophy of pure practice, an engineering project for the self that demands you reject the factory settings of your own existence.
I think that's a good way to put it.
To sum up the master analogy one last time, think of your body as a high-end electronic device. The organism is the factory-shipped, locked-down, proprietary system.
Right. It dictates what software can run, what functions are allowed, and where the data desire is stored. Usually in the cloud of lack or fantasy, you are bound by the warranty and the judgment of God.
The body without organs is the radical jailbreak. It's the moment you flash the firmware, dismantle the hardware restrictions, and install a custom, unstable, and infinitely customizable system that rejects all proprietary standards.
Your components are no longer locked into their original purposes, but the risk is incredibly high.
If you flash too quickly, you brick the device. That's the empty body.
And if you run too much invasive self-replicating code, you get malware that takes over the system, turning it into a totalitarian surveillance node, the cancerous body.
The art of dosage, guided by the tonal, is ensuring you maintain enough of the original chassis to keep running while enabling the intensive, customized flows of the Nagual.
And if there is one sentence that captures the continuous, impossible, yet vital nature of this entire enterprise, the absolute dedication to the process over the destination, it is this.
What is it?
You never reach the body without organs. You can't reach it. You are forever attaining it. It is a limit.
That limit, that process of perpetual attainment, is where everything is played out. We have learned today that the ultimate question is not one of ideology or interpretation.
No, it's one of pure matter and its capacity for organization.
Even fascism, the source tells us, is a specific cancerous constitution of a BWO, a terrible realization that desire is always productive, even when it produces monstrosity.
You have constructed your own little machine, ready to be plugged into other collective machines.
So as you go back into the stratified world, consider this final provocative thought. The BWO project is about achieving maximum intensive effect without relying on external destructive means. The source mentions Henry Miller's goal of getting soused on pure water. We saw the masochist construct a zero-degree field of pain to produce joy waves. So the question for you is,
what abstract machine could you construct today, utilizing intensive continuity and the meticulous art of dosage that would allow you to get those intense, self-sufficient joy flows?
the feeling of being completely filled by your own process.
Without relying on the strata of drugs, sex, or destructive fantasy.
Where is your point of intensive production? Thank you for allowing us to explore your sources and take this deep dive. We'll see you next time on Doctorates of the Absurd.